Welcome everybody to today's session. My name is Laura Allen and I am the Global Wellbeing Lead at Jet. So I think in our busy lives, we often forget how important it is to take care of ourselves. This time of year, although is a happy and exciting time for many, it can be also very difficult for others. As we deal with life's challenges, the challenges it throws up to us, it's really important that we arm ourselves with the knowledge and the tools, not just to survive, whether it's during this time or throughout the rest of the year, but also to thrive. It's a real pleasure for me today to bring you Dr. Batman, who is part of the science team at Virgin Pulse, a wellbeing partner. And Dr. Batman's going to help us really think about how to have a healthier, stronger mind in the session today. So I'm going to present my slides and then I'm going to hand over to Dr. Batman, who will take us through a little bit of content. And then myself and Dr. Batman will have a bit of a fireside chat and we'll invite you to participate in that too. So bear with me a second. I will share my screen. There we go. As always, we have a Slido set up. So for those of you that have some questions about the content that we covered today, or any specific things, the kind of burning issues or questions on your mind, please do get involved. We want to make this an interactive session. So you can join at slido.com, hashtag 4152258. You can use that QR code to access Slido too. I will remind you of that a little bit later on in the session after Dr. B has shared some information. So, Dr. B, over to you.
As always, Laura, it's a real pleasure to join you in the Jet community here. It's always very worthwhile to be part of this. It is a difficult time of year for a lot of people. It is a happy time. It's a conflicting time. But I think I spend my life probably a lot of the time dealing with people with mental health problems, mental health worries. That's my specialty, resilience, sleep, etc. But I can't remember the last time I prescribed an antidepressant. I was saying the other day was 30 years ago, because I spend my time talking to people about the simple things that they can do, both to prevent you getting into a turmoil in the mind, but also to help it as well at the same time. So I'm going to show you some insights, some tips, etc., which you can take away. And people who know me, I'd like to take away the jargon of medicine. Let's keep it simple so that we can actually make things happen. So as we sort of go forward, I'm going to ask you sort of 4 basic questions on the next slide, which is saying, if you look at the media, and particularly Dr. Google, and I'll say from the start, please don't go to Dr. Google. He's not qualified, doesn't take any extra training, and gets confused. But there's a lot about mental health problems are more prevalent than ever before. So I'll ask the question, why? And are they more prevalent? And what do we need to do? But I think the fundamental thing that we want to get across to you today, and Laura and I talked a lot about this, is it okay not to feel okay? Because there's this belief that you've got to be 100% of the time. And I hope I can get it across to you that even I am not like that. I have my moments, just like anybody else. And then how can we recognize and support ourselves and each other? And we've got to remember that it's about supporting each other. We're all in a community. That community can be anything from just your neighbor, your colleague, right up to the bigger, wider community. So we're all part of it, and we're all in the same boat. So let's really just start with the next slide. And what I'm going to talk about this, and for just about every patient that I see at the moment and have seen for the last 2 and a bit years, when you think, what are the things, I ask the question, what is it that keeps you awake at night? What do you worry about? And for a lot of people, it's this media exposure to the world of conflict, what I think I would call war anxiety. You can't get away from it. It's just there. It's affecting people's sleep and their mood. And they may have friends there. You may have colleagues there, etc., in a war torn. And how do you deal with it? What do you say? And it's this lack of control. So I'm going to use the word conflict as it there. And I was saying to Laura, this is not just about ourselves. We've got to remember we've got families as well. My 7-year-old granddaughter was traumatized just by seeing a news feed on the Russia-Ukrainian conflict, etc., and has to have had psychological help to get her through that, etc. So remember, it affects everyone, from literally from the moment you can see and recognize what's going on in the media right up into your hundreds. We're all involved in this. So although I'm not going to talk any more about war anxiety, but I'm going to use this word conflict and take us through that conflict. But if I look at the next slide now and just look at what is actually happening here in the world, and this is just a small study, it was only 4,000 people, but I believe it's reflective really about what's happening to people. Levels of anxiety, stress, and depression are all up. And if you look at that, you know, between 60 and 70% of people are actually feeling something. But I will use the analogy going through of the swan. And the swan is calm and serene, whatever body of water it's on. It seems to be in control. It knows where it's going and the direction it's going. But underneath, it's paddling like mad. And I think we're all swans. And really, we're a flock of swans. And I want you to imagine we're a flock of swans and we're all in that same boat together. And I think the figure that really worries me more than anything is that last figure, where only 10% of employees are actually seeking support. There is still this stigma and this worry and things that are going around it. If you had the worry that you had a cancer, heart disease, diabetes, you go and get help. And you know, we will talk about this in our fireside chat. Why is mental health treated differently? And the last bit that really I just want you to think about asking 2 questions on the next list. So I'd say to people, and you say to other bells, because you know people around you, how are you? Now, typical tradition worldwide, if you ask anybody, how are you? They go, I'm okay. No, they're not. They're swans. Ask the next question. How are you really? Make these 2 questions just part of your vocabulary, day in, day out, etc. Because what we will see now is that the things that are impacting us all on the next slide, which will give us a list of things. Now, this list is not exhaustive, but I just want you to start and think, because these are not sort of overt, these are covert things. I ask every patient 100%, how are you sleeping? And I don't just do it for the fun of it. Sleep fundamentally is important for our mental health, but it's the best indicator of what your mind is doing. If you are worrying and you're anxious, you have difficulty getting to sleep. If you are depressed and a low mood or PTSD, you tend to get off to sleep but then wake up. So literally, just thinking about how you're sleeping and how tired you are. What's your mood like? And it's easy, you know, and we're a bit flippant with mood of loved ones, you know, oh, you're moody today, or you're aggressive. Hang on, they're doing that for a reason. Something's happening. So think about those pointings. You can see if they're irritable. You can see if people stop talking to you. So, you know, suddenly you've had great social contacts and suddenly those people are avoiding you. What's going on? So those interpersonal relationships that go on. And ultimately, if mental health, particularly in the workplace anxiety, if you're not concentrating, if you're tired, your memory's not so good, you might be using coffee to keep you awake. You may be using alcohol to get you asleep. You may be using illicit substance abuse. That affects everything about our personality and everything around us. As I said, this list isn't exhaustive. So I would ask you to remember one word. I say I'm a simple man. Simple message is that word is change. If something has changed in you, just stop and think, what's changed, why it's changed, do I need help? If you see something in a loved one, a colleague, a friend, a neighbor, something's changed, don't go into the world of challenge. Just stop and think, are you okay? Are you okay, really? And I think these are important things that we all need to be aware of. So if we click on the next one, so why are so many of us feeling levels of distress? Is it mental ill health, or is it just that it's okay? And I'm going to go back. I think the tipping point that we all talk about now, the start of COVID, you know, coming up to nearly 4 years ago, is sort of a tipping point. And I remember those first probably 6 months, the vast majority of people who would ring me up, talk to me, work and outside, whatever I was doing, whether it's a clinic or something else, would be anxious. And I spent so much time saying to people is, it's okay to feel anxious. We're in a worrying time. We're in uncertainty, lack of trust. So for a lot of the time, it is okay. You're just being a swan, but everybody else of you is being a swan at the same time. So a lot of the time, you don't have to feel regardless of Dr. Google and the media. You don't have to feel happy and buoyant and jumping around all the time. You are allowed to have off days. That is allowable. I'm giving you a license to have some off days. Okay, let's keep going, Laura, on the next one now. So I'm going to talk about, I go back to this conflict, and it started with a war, but I'm getting away from what are the conflicts. I'm going to talk about that. Now, when we talk about conflict, it's a struggle between interest, opinion, and principles. You know, one thing I talk about with people is people have a real desire to be healthy. So why do they go on and eat all sorts of foods and behavior? There's a conflict there already. And we're always going to have it. And that's nothing new. We can't take that away. Let's not try and take that away. And we have conflicts at all sorts of levels, from race and class and caste and religion and sexuality and gender. They're there, and it's part of it. And I think we've all lost this ability to stop and reflect and allow people to have opinions which are different to our own. And that's allowable. That's allowable. But what happens with all these conflicts, because they tend to be inwardly in us, that's when it reflects itself in emotion and through your intellect and through other theory, and which is where it sort of unwraps the mind, etc. And that's why we get into problems of that. So as we go forward onto the next slide and start to try and unravel this, let's see where we are. And I'll put up here what I call generational struggles, and they conflicts, etc. And we've all got them, and I think we all need to be aware of them at the base. And if I look at sort of, and I'm going to go from left to right, starting at those under 21, a long time since I saw that, but I remember that one. It's about peer pressures. It's about family dynamics. I watch my grandchildren getting opinions and their parents getting upset. I had that with my kids, etc. This is just part, again, of normality. We have more and more issues around gender dysphoria, the use of technology, and I put technology addiction, because I've seen far too many, and I talked about socializing earlier on, too many people socialize through a screen. Do you know that we have an interesting sort of statistic of the number of people who are looking at their phones as they're walking, and walk into telegraph poles, etc., walk into fences, slip off things, etc., because we're not looking at what's going on around us. So they have that. And I move up the age group now to those 22 to 37. Conflicts around job security and financial security, particularly this time of year. You know, where is the extra money for having a good time, for instance? What am I going to give up? It's career versus family as well at the same time. And that goes into the next age group as well as we're going. Is it, a conflict between our lifestyle, which we enjoy, against ill health? And what I'm saying to people, you can actually, reduce your risk of dementia, which you might get in your 60s by behaving differently in your 20s. People laugh at me, etc. So there are things there, there are conflicts there. On the next age group, as we get up into the 40s and the 50s now, it's having fun versus retirement. And can we afford retirement? What do we need to do, etc.? It's the empty nesting as your kids leave home, etc. That's very disruptive for a lot of people, etc. It's about parental care versus going to work, and the cost of parental care, and the quality of parental care, and the quality of kids' care. It's difficult. And above all, as we get into that group, I'm seeing people with sort of 3 generational homes where our elderly relatives who are aging, who are getting infirm, who may be getting dementia, cost of residential care. So you have 3 generational families, and that's disruptive. And the last age group, which up to the age of 70 plus, this is about aging and getting old. I know that I'm advancing ages. I'm getting towards my middle 70s, but I'm determined I'm not going to be old. I'm doing everything I can to keep myself young, although the years are passing me by. And that's a conflict that I have. It's about personal and financial support that goes on. I worry about what's going to happen to my grandkids, as opposed to my children saying it's their world, they'll find something through it. That's a conflict to me. So I think what we're seeing here right the way through all of this is this goes on in the background, and it's no wonder things are happening. Now, the next build I'm going to put onto this is about the now. That, this is the season that we're going into. For a lot of people, it's seasonal festivities, and we must remember this is not always a festive season for everybody. This is about appreciating there are a range of people with a range of requirements. And some people are lonely. And remember, people can be lonely in relationships as well at the same time. It's not just people being out of home, etc. People feel conflicted at the same time. I used to have a friend who was as a lawyer, and he used to open his practice the day after Christmas. The number of people who had been thrown together over Christmas who wanted a divorce, for instance, used to go up enormously, etc. So we're throwing people together. There's the children's needs versus the adults' needs, peace and quiet versus flamboyancy. You know, Laura's looking there, but if you've got children, Christmas night and Christmas morning is a time of sleep loss, and sleep loss is a form of torture, actually, when the kids get up early, etc. It's a need to be healthier versus indulgence. And above all, we've got world tragedy and that worry about thinking about people in difficult, different situations to ourselves. So the world is full of conflicts. So I started with war, and I've come right down to kids and personal conflicts, and the lives that we lead is conflicting. And that's why with all this going on, you can never have a completely peaceful mind. There's always something that's going on and triggering it. And that's okay. You don't need to worry about that. So moving on to the next one. What are we looking at? Now, I'm going to paint a picture here. And I think going from what I've just said, if you can remember the circus juggler, that's what we're all like. We're trying to balance on a unicycle and balance all these balls in the air, work and home and all the rest of it. So as we'll see on the next picture, what does the mind look like? And the mind, it's knotted up. I just wanted to put my Christmas tree up today, and I've looked and I put all the string of lights away, and I thought on a nice place, it's all jumbled up again now. Where's the end of it? And that's what your mind is like. Everything's jumbled up. What's that lead to? And I think what we are looking at now is, these are the statistics that start to worry me. What happens when people are worried? You go and see your doctor. If you can get to see your doctor, that's another conflict about accessibility. I spend an hour with my patients. Everyone gets a minimum of an hour. And even I, with my expertise, find it hard sometimes to find out what is the real problem we should be doing. It is too easy, and I'm not knocking my general practitioner colleagues who have difficult lives, difficult working lives. It's too easy to give people a bottle of tablets and say, go away, this will sort your problems out. It won't. It doesn't make you feel a bit better, but it doesn't solve the problems. And so I have a worry here under the conflict. So finally, the last bit of the build on this one, is medication the way forward? Let's look at some other things that you can do now and going forward. Let's move you away from all the advice I'm going to give you now is what I will give in one way or another to every patient that I see. They all get a bit of this somewhere thrown in from me. So moving forward, Laura. The most important thing is if you've got those conflicts there, act, prioritize, decide what's the most important thing to do, and that's fine. But we're coming into this time when businesses have a break, you have a break. And what I say to people is when they say, well, I'm always busy, there are 2 days every year when you can do nothing. And everybody says, oh, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, whatever that festivity is. No, yesterday and tomorrow. And we spend our lives thinking and worrying about what happened in the past. We spend a lot of our lives worrying about what's going to happen in the future. And what I would say is for now and for the time being, be a little bit selfish, just live in the now. Let's look at that. And if there are major problems, let's try and solve them, get some help from those. But let's try and divorce ourselves for other things which might be happening over which we've no control as well at the same time. But if you are in real problems, real struggles, please don't bury your head. We are there. Support services are there. It might be an EAP. It might be a GP. It might be counseling. It might just be your partner, your loved one, a friend, a colleague. Please reach out. There's always somebody, as black as your life may seem, there's always hope. There's always somebody that can help. Okay, let's keep going with these. Right. How can we mitigate the risks? So let's look at 4 areas I want to look at. And the most important one I would say to everybody is limit your media exposure. And it's not just the news or the newspapers or magazines, etc. A lot of it is social media. You know, a lot of negativity on social media as well at the same time. So let's avoid that. And particularly for your mental health, and I talked about sleep earlier on, what I really say is try and avoid looking at your media and social media I would say anything up to 2 hours before bed, because those are the last things that you go to sleep, and those are things you're worrying you and stop you getting off to sleep. Social media is something that we need to watch out and be very careful about. It is having a very negative effect on people. Use it for the positive side, but just limit yourself, etc. The next thing I want to talk about on the next build is reaching out to others. I've said that, and I can't emphasize enough the power and the support of friends and people. Now, the other thing we've talked about, and we want to feel good, we want to feel better, is about just giving at this time of year for people less fortunate than ourselves. And it is easy to do, and that's an important thing that we do. My wife and I will give to local organizations at this time of year, and it does make you feel an awful lot better. And I think, again, stop worrying about what you might say, because far too many people pass people by. We see it traditionally in people who are being bereaved. You don't know what to say, you don't want to upset them, so you say nothing and you avoid them. If you have seen and are aware of somebody that might be struggling, but not them, don't ignore them. If you see change in somebody, just ask the question, how are you? How are you really? Start a dialogue. Find a quiet place to do that, but really reach out as much as you can. It's vital. And on the next bit I want to talk about is cultivate compassion. This is, too many people jump in as if to say, you can't have an opinion, I'm offended, etc. We have a right to opinions. And I think personally, we spend too much time challenging as opposed to listening and recognizing that even in times of conflict, people have different opinions and they have a right to those opinions. We probably don't fully understand the background of those opinions, but it's actually fun to look at those opinions and to see what is going on. And again, I look at my grandchildren. They're all in multicultural schools and they're learning about other generations. They're learning about other races, other creeds, other religions, issues of gender. And I think it's absolutely wonderful. But at that age, they're so open and so impressionable and they want to learn. So adapt sort of a childlike approach to it and listen and learn and move forward. The last thing I would say here on this slide is about looking at your routines, because it is too easy at this time of year when we're busy. Those of you who exercise, even just getting out for a walk during the day, it's too easy for those to drop off, etc. So keep looking at your exercise levels, your sleep, your mindfulness if you do it, and keep those contacts with going. So keep the routines going, because they do tend to drop off. Okay, thank you, Laura. On the next one, we're going to look at some more ways of going forward. And I know that a number of you here will be managers here. So we'll go back a bit into the work context and saying, how can you help as a manager? Managers, in terms of mental health and mental health at work, to me, are pivotal, absolutely pivotal in actually recognizing, managing, support, signposting, etc. I actually tell you, and I don't like to talk about managers and leaders. I want you all to be empathetic leaders. And empathy is the biggest emotion that you can show there. So increased awareness and the risk. You know your people, or I hope you know your people. You might know those at risks between where they work, and that might be a part of the country or another country, area of conflict, whatever. Just be aware of that. Keep the communications going. Communication is vital to this, and allow people to express feelings. And above all, express your feelings, because you're a human being as well as a manager. And just asking, how am I? How are you? Just part of team meetings. Just spending time and reflecting, saying, how's everybody feeling there, etc. If you have people who are struggling, I don't want you to become the therapist. I want you to become the aware. You need to know where you can signpost people to. I know you've got a lot of signposting, a lot of awareness within the business. Make sure you know, particularly at this time of year, etc. And the team building, everything else. So really, I want you to be a pivotal part in helping. But again, and I use the analogy, if you've been on a flight or on a holiday recently this year, remember the safety briefing that says at the beginning, if this aircraft depressurizes, put your own mask on first. Make sure you're looking after yourself before you look at others. Thank you, Laura. On the next one. So what can you do now? This moment, as I said, you can't do anything yesterday, you can't do anything tomorrow. What can you do now? Ask yourself. We ask you to ask everybody else how you're doing. Ask yourself, how am I doing today? What's my sleep? What's my appetite? What's my irritability? You know, I said to Laura, I just in the lounge there, passed a book that I had open. I've not moved the chapter in a week, and I like reading. What stopped me from reading it? What's been going on? Simple pointers. Okay. The next one I would look at is don't be this swan. Don't be sort of pedaling along there. Be open and honest. Get up and fly and recognize the rest of the people around. So communications is vital here. Next click, please, Laura. And I knew this one was coming. Please avoid Dr. Google. And I keep saying, I can't, too many people, every patient I see has got an opinion from Dr. Google. If you want an opinion, go to a professional. Go to an EAP. Make sure that they have got the right background, the competencies, and the information to help you. Thank you, Laura. If you are okay and the mind's mixed up, you know, you're there, you're juggling, etc. See what you're juggling. See if you can get rid of some of those balls, at least park them for the time being. And finally, talk, communicate, open. This is the time for festivities. And I know it's busy, and I know some people aren't doing it, but the more we can communicate, and communicate is not electronically. Try and find time. If you can't do it face to face, pick up the phone for a change, you know, do a FaceTime, see that smiling face. Or maybe it's not smiling. Recognize the changes there. Communication is vital. Okay, I'm going on to the next lot. This positivity, you know, things will be okay in the end, etc. Do things that make you happy. Dance to the music, have fun with the kids, be a child for a little while, etc. It's allowed, you know, as they say, dance as if nobody can see you. That's fine, etc. Manage your sleep and do this, but let's have this attitude of positivity. I always say to people, there's no such thing as a problem. You've just got to find the solution. And the other thing I've always said is, if you can't change your circumstances, change your attitude. And it is amazing how just changing people's attitudes changes your behaviors. So simple things. You can do all this. You don't need me to do it. There's no tablet that will do this for you. You can do it now. Okay, and the next one is all about your lifestyle. So I don't want you to forget the exercise, the sleep, the mindfulness. We're all going to indulge, and it's allowed. You can indulge in food. You can have a day off from some of the diets and everything else, etc. What I would say is just watch the alcohol, just watch the booze. Everything in moderation is fine, etc. But you can drop off this time of year. But please, a bit of exercise will do you the world of good. But sleep is the key one. I think we're coming to the end now, Laura. I think as we're going forward, this is a quote that I like. It's actually a Hebrew quote. John Lennon is probably the most famous one. John F. Kennedy, an ex-president of the USA, used it. If you looked at my office wall here, I've got a sign which my children gave you, which is above here, and I look at it every day, and it reminds me that yesterday and tomorrow, everything will be okay in the end. Don't know what that okay is going to be. So if it's not okay, it isn't the end. There's always something you can do. So I've probably talked for a little while longer than I anticipated. I hope we've given you some ideas, and I'm going to hand back to Laura and see if we can answer some of the questions, some of the things that are worrying you that I can help with.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Dr. B. Just a reminder of the Slido. I can see a couple of questions have already come through, so I will bring those into the fireside chat in a second. But join at slido.com, #4152258. So I'm going to stop presenting now. So hopefully you've had a chance to capture that either on your phone or on your desktop. So I'll just stop presenting a second so I can get the Slido open. And I'm actually going to kick off the chat with a couple of questions myself, Dr. B, before I get into the questions from the participants. One of the things that I'm always really interested in and talk a lot about with our mental health first aid community is that fundamental connection between mental and physical health. And I'm intrigued to hear your insights on that connection and how it impacts our overall well-being.
Anybody who knows me that over my 50 years of medicine, I always talk about health. I don't compartmentalize physical and mental health. You can't have one about the other. But because of sort of the stigma that has grown up around mental health and this fear of failure and being different and you're not strong enough, etc., we hide away from it. And I will say there is a gender difference here. Men are far worse than women, and it's about communication. But and I think all the things that I've talked about there in terms of your lifestyle are equally as good for physical health as mental health. Anybody who's got a physical problem invariably got pain affects you mentally because it affects your sleep, distractions as well at the same time. And I think we've all got to move away from this putting things into buckets, into silos, and we've got to talk about health. And in fairness, you know, if you think about your own lives, how much time do you spend thinking about your health? How much time do you think about other people's health? How much time do we talk about prevention? Unfortunately, I think whichever country in the world that you come to, we've brought people up on this basis that, you know, if you do get sick, it's just by chance, or it might be due to genetics, and anyway, the health service will fix you. None of that is true, particularly in a post-COVID world. The health services are struggling more than anything else. So I think we've got to put health as top of probably the top priority, because without good health, you can't function as a human being, no matter where you are. And I think we've all got to find at that time, if you want to set new resolutions, and I'm not very in favor of that because they only get broken on day 2 anyway. But if you can have a to-do list, a priority list, get health into, if you're not your top 1, into the top 5, so that part of your time you are taking note of it. But remember, physical health and mental health are totally intertwined. There isn't one without the other. Even if I'm seeing somebody with cancer, there's mental health problems there. There will be collateral damage between their loved ones, children, workmates as well at the same time. And we've got to be open there. The difference between physical health is that, one, you can sometimes see it if they've got a crutch, if they've got a scar, but people will tell you if they've got a physical health problem. They'll talk about the diabetes, the epilepsy, the cancers as well, etc. We've got to get away from this stigma of mental health. We've got to treat it on an equal footing, that mental health and physical health is one and the same.
Yeah, and it's really making me think about a conversation we had earlier on around the science, and actually it's a question that came through on side. So I'll read the question, and then it's also kind of my own build I want to put on it. So someone's asked, in your experience, what are some of the signs or changes that we should be aware of within ourselves, and so the signs that are trying to tell us we're not okay. And one of the conversations you and I were having, Dr. B, was around, I think it was about your book, but sometimes those changes are really strong. When they're physical changes, perhaps we are much more aware of them, but those subtle changes are harder to notice. So what are the signs that you'd say?
The first one, I mean, there are a lot of signs. We're all different, so we're all going to have different pointers. And I will go back to, and the one word I would ask you to take a word is that word change. Change, and I've talked about a lot of the sort of the generation issues that cause problems, and change creates uncertainty and worries for us all. But I just want you to remember, if something has changed, and the simple things that you want to look out for, and the most common one I've found over many, many years is, if from a mental health point of view, is the first thing that changes is your sleep pattern. And we all have bad nights and the other one. But if you are developing a pattern where you are, first of all, getting difficulty getting off to sleep, you know, what is it that's going through your mind that's distracting you, that doesn't allow the normal sleep hormones or sleep patterns to kick in? So sleep is one, and normally people who've got anxiety have difficulty getting off to sleep. People are going to mood disorders with the depression tend to get off to sleep okay, but then the problems they're ruminating with wake them up at 3-4 o'clock in the morning, etc. So the first one is, I would look at your sleep pattern. That is a really good and the best indicator that things are not quite right. But I say we all have the odd night where things are not right. It's when these go along for a prolonged period. And what then kicks in is the fatigue that kicks in. You know, you're sluggish. And then concentration and memory tends to wander as well at the same time. So you're forgetting things. You're having to write more things down. You're not as good at completing work, for instance, etc. So I would look at that as the things that kick in. It may well be that your appetite has changed, or the things that, if you're having sleep problems, you might be drinking more coffee to keep you awake, for instance, to prolong it. You might start to use, and I hope you don't, alcohol or substance abuse to help you manage that as well at the same time. Those are the things to look at as the key one. The behavioral thing. You know, I said today, I haven't moved that chapter in my book for a week why haven't I had the time to sit down? I will say my mental health is struggling at the moment. I got COVID 2 weeks ago, and I've now got COVID fatigue. I've got an element of brain fog. I've got an element of low mood, and that's what's kicking in for me. Now, I know that will go away, but it's those subtle ones that you've got there. It might well be that you haven't had that contact with your loved one, your family, your friends, a colleague. You've not found the time to get involved with them at the same time. Your appetite might have changed. You're not enjoying it. And I think a lot of it is you're just not enjoying life. And that's when you might be more irritable. And where you did, and you may well get somebody else, a partner, somebody else to say to you, you're not the same as usual. So, and then don't get offended and affronted by that. They're trying to help, for goodness sake, but we do tend to get offended by that. And just saying, oh, am I really? What have you noticed? Bring them into the conversation, because people noticed other things that you don't notice, because you're that swan on the outside. On the surface, you think you're great. You think you're going in the right direction. You know where you're going. Somebody else. And even that, you get that. And I will go on to the physical side as well. People sort of say, hang on, you've lost weight, haven't you? And if you're not trying to struggle with weight, that might be the indicator of a cancer or diabetes or a thyroid problem as well at the same time. So it's about this change and noting the change and responding positively. Now, I said it's okay not to be okay part of the time. But if this is going on a little while longer, more than you expect, a few days, do not be affronted or afraid to talk to somebody for help. It may be a GP, it may be an AAP, it might just be a colleague about what do you think. You may know somebody who suffered with anxiety or depression. Talk to them. They're actually very good at giving you some insights at the same time. So it's all embracing, but we're all different. So I'll go back. Just remember this change bit.
Yeah, amazing. One thing, there's quite a few questions that come through, so I really want to get to them. But one thing that I did want to mention, because I know, one of the things that you're really keen to do when the client comes in, or the patient, comes in when they're struggling, is to understand what's really going on and try and address the root cause, as opposed to diagnosing or giving them antidepressants. But for a lot of people, antidepressants in the short term can really support them in getting back on track. Can you just talk a little bit more about that? So I really want to make sure that people do, they play an important role for some people. And
Look, this is what about seeing a professional person, but you need time with that professional person as well. There's probably 20-25% of people who really do need some form of psychological medication, some form of support. That's fine. But what I really want to get across to people is, for a lot of people, if you spend time with them, and I think the key skills, whether you're an individual or a manager, even as doctors, what I say is listen and hear. And you need to listen to people. Now, if you take the word listen, rearrange those 6 letters, it spells silent. And it's about having silence and not trying to interject. It is about looking at people and seeing how their behaviors and observing them. Are they sitting quietly? Are their eyes flickering away? Are they moving? It is about understanding that. But I spend time actually saying to people, and the way I do, I'll take them back on a timeline. And the question I always ask is, when did you last feel 100% okay and in control? And then we will work forward from that. And there's often some triggers in there. It may be finance, relationships, work, a manager, whatever it is. And too often, as I can see, is that if we'd address that problem, then the other things wouldn't go away. So what is it that's on your mind when you can't get to sleep? And sometimes, medication, although it's great for certain things, is not going to solve your financial problems, the relationship problems, the problems with your kids. And I think a lot of people actually will benefit from the support in those areas. And just as there's a stigma about mental health, there's often a stigma about getting financial advice. The stigma about getting relationship advice, etc. There are all sorts of other things where non-medical interventions will actually sort the problem out. Whereas, and what I keep saying to people, a bottle of tablets and 6 weeks of work will just get you more ruminating about that problem. So it may be a combination of things you need, Laura. Medical support, but also getting that signposting to something that is going to make a difference. Because too many times I'm unraveling, and it takes why I spend an hour is trying to get to the root cause of the problem.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Right, I'm going to get through to these questions because otherwise we're not going to get to them. So in your experience, what are the reasons people don't seek help? It's hard to help people when they're resistant. So understanding why they don't seek help is helpful.
A lot of it is just the stigma of mental health.
Yeah.
It's this belief that I should be stronger. I should be able to cope. It's the old, pull your socks and get on with it, lad, as my dad and my grandfather used to say, etc. That doesn't work. And I think for a lot of people, they've maybe tried to get help and got knocked back because that person wasn't receptive. And I would say those of you line managers, somebody who comes to talk to you about a problem, just think it's taken a lot of courage for them to come and talk to you about it. They've not just done it glibly. You may be busy, and you're all busy people, and we know that, etc. But a key skill is actually just recognize that individual. You only take 2 or 3 minutes to say, oh, that's important. And all you need to say to it is, I'm busy, but can I put some time in the diary? And it may be later in the day, tomorrow. The fact is they've gone away, and it's not just what you say to people, it's how you leave them feeling. If you're feeling that person's going to help me, going to be responsible, they're going to come back again. So that helps as well at the same time. There is a real difference between how people talk and how people communicate about their emotions. Because when we talk about mental ill health, etc., a lot of it is how you feel, how your emotions are, how you're sleeping, all the rest of it. There is a very different male-female split. The male is not good. They will talk to you about football and the weather till the cows come home. But to express that you are having an emotional issue is very different. And a lot of males respond with bravado, why aren't you strong enough, and all the rest of it. And we've got to do that. From a female perspective, you are much better communicators. You've got much better use of sympathy and empathy, the key emotions that matter. And I think those people, and we see it in people who are bringing up children, when you've got to look at your kids' emotions as well, that really helps at the same time. But it's also very difficult for some people just to go to the doctor. They're only going to crisis. And in fact, unfortunately, and again, I am going to say to the medical profession, they're not particularly good at the softer side of it, because we've been trained, and I was trained, here's the medical problem, what's the symptom, how do I diagnose it, what's the investigation, what's the treatment, as opposed to let's have an interpersonal talk about this, because that takes time as well at the same time. So it is difficult, and it is about behaviors, it's about attitudes. And the more that we can do at all levels of society to destigmatize health, and I'm going to say health rather than physical or mental health, because there are people who don't present with cancers till very late as well at the same time, or diabetes. I just want people to be able to feel comfortable. It's about creating that psychologically safe place to be, where you can have a non-threatening conversation with whoever. And it's about finding the time and the place and the rapport. And remember, at the end of it, very rarely is it just a one-off conversation. And it's about saying to people, and they may want to go away wherever you signposted them to do, and the help, come back for another chat with me. And it is about having a chat. People say to me, when I do line manager training, everybody says, how do I have that difficult conversation? It's not a difficult conversation. It is just a conversation. If you think it's going to be difficult, it will be difficult. You make it, you're already setting yourself up for a failure. Just have that. But please be aware that anybody who comes to you and wants to talk about a health problem, for a lot of people, particularly in the work environment, it takes a huge amount of courage to do that. Knock them back, lack of trust, failure to understand. They may not come back again, and they may well tell somebody else, don't talk to that person, they're going to be dismissive.
Yeah, it's amazing the impact of that. And I think particularly, everyone's so busy, and it's very easy in a situation where someone comes to you to be overwhelmed by the busyness and kind of dismiss it, not seeing the person in front of you. And you're right, I think you only ask once, you only seek support once, and then that psychological safety is gone. So
Yeah,
important.
quite right.
Another question. You mentioned having a positive mindset as a way to work through your problems, but how does one go about cultivating and growing one in the first place?
I think the first thing to do is to recognize just how much control you can have over yourself. And again, I come back to we talk about health, and it's really physical and mental health. It is about having this ability that says, I can be in control about what's going on. The media doesn't control me. There's no other individual that controls me. And it is about having that positivity that you can effect change, and you can effect change in yourself apart from anything else. I would say to people who are struggling, because again, I come back to that, the circus juggler there and the mind that's all tangled there. One of the best techniques, if people want advice on something to do, is to adopt the technique of mindfulness, because mindfulness doesn't stop your thoughts. They're still there, but it allows you to actually be more aware of your thoughts, and the one you can just let drift past, etc. I practice mindfulness every day. I try to get 5 or 10 minutes in every day, and I practice 2 or 3 minutes between every patient, because I don't want the worries that I've got, because it's like coming into a priest confessional sometimes. The patient, the employee, does an emotional dump on me, goes out feeling better, and leaves me struggling with their problems. I need to let my mind at rest before I give full focus to the next person. I really do believe that mindfulness, it's not an easy technique. There's some good apps around, but if you can just practice that, and it is about thinking, is this a problem, or can I find a solution, etc. If I can't change my circumstances, which different, maybe I can change the way that I look about it as well at the same time. If you talk to my 3 children who've grown up now, etc., they will say the same thing, that I've always practiced that with them, etc. The problem is they now come back to me and they say, look, we have a problem. I think you're the solution, Dad. And I just say, how much? So it has rebounded on me a little bit. You've also got to say is, I have a problem. You call me Dr. B, but Batman is my surname. I have a problem if I'm out, particularly this time of year, and I won't drive. If I want a taxi back at 1, 2 in the morning, ring up a taxi company and they say, well, who wants picking up? And you say Batman. They never come. So, you've got to think about it in a different way.
I love that. I think sometimes when you're feeling a bit overwhelmed by the challenges, it's hard to identify where you do have control, and actually often we do have a lot more control than we realize.
Yes. Yeah. I think the other thing that is a really good one is that you've got all these things bouncing around in your mind. Write them down, physically write them down on a piece of paper, pencil and paper. And it's amazing when you write them down, they look differently. And I will also say about the anxiety of going to bed at night, worrying about it. It is an amazing technique that if a couple of hours before you go to bed, you physically write down those things that you have to do or that are worrying you, your mind, and I'm not sure how it works, but it discharges those problems. It says, I've written them down. I know they'll be there tomorrow. And it doesn't worry them. And so it gets out of your subconscious stuff. So physically writing things down doesn't look as bad. But again, you can prioritize because you can see them.
Yeah. Speaking of which, there's a good link there, Dr. B, around sleep. Another question around whether there's any specific or concrete tips for improving sleep quality to have restful and restorative sleep.
Yes, the most important thing is sleep can be managed. For most people, it's just something that happens regardless. A bit like exercise, you can manage your sleep. So again, it's having this positive attitude that says, I can manage my sleep. And the simple tips are having a regular routine 7 days a week. Try to go to bed at the same time and work at the same time, because your body is controlled by natural body rhythms, circadian rhythms. Those circadian rhythms, which are responding to the levels of light, etc., apart from the time of day, produce the natural sleep hormone called melatonin. So as it gets to 8, 9 o'clock at night, for instance, and the dusk area, and the body and the mind knows this, it starts to increase the levels of your melatonin, the natural sleep hormone. The next thing I've said to you is don't look at your tablets, your phones, whatever it is. And I did that about not having these thoughts going through your head. The other thing is because your sleep cycle is responsible to light, The blue lit back screens of your phone, of your tablet, or your laptop, etc., puts those rays of blue light to the back of your eye, and your body says, oh, it's daytime, and it switches off the natural hormone. So there's another reason for not doing that.
Mhm.
Bedrooms should be ideally a couple of degrees below natural body temperature. You sleep better in slightly cold than you do in the warm, etc. Bedrooms are for sleep, sex, maybe a bit of TV. They're not for working. Please don't try and work and then switch off. But it's too easy because your mobile phone is your mobile office. I'll just look at that last email. That triggers the thoughts. That's the thing to do. I say to people, caffeine in particular, I don't drink caffeine after 2 o'clock in the afternoon because I know it's a long half-life. That can keep you awake as well at the same time. The other thing I would say is, above all, it's practicing what I call an attitude of gratitude. And again, it's this switching the mind off. You go to bed, and as you switch the light off, naturally you think about what were the problems of today, what's my tool, and subconsciously it goes. If you, again, change these circumstances, change your attitude towards it, think of the 3 to 5 things that went well today. It might be a piece of work completed. It might be conversation, a glass of wine, the kids behaved well, something nice and positive. If you can just have 3 to 5 positive things that you are grateful for as you close your eyes, it dampens down the background noise in the mind and will help you sleep. So switch, regular times. And please remember, you can't create a sleep deficit during the week and say, I'm going to catch up at weekends. That does not work. We've seen scientifically, it doesn't work. You need, as far as you can, regular sleep patterns for the hormones and everything else. Avoid the backlit screens, avoid the noise of work and the media, etc. Attitude of gratitude. Those are the things that work.
I'm really keen to dig on this one a little bit deeper because, again, the conversation I've had a few times around, we know how, what we should be doing to have a good sleep routine. We know the exposure to media, social media before bed or media generally can be triggering for us. We know what we should be eating in the most part. What gets in the way? What stops us? There's something you said to me before around how we see our future selves and like the investment we need to make now for that future self. But just generally, talk to me a little bit about this.
It's all about changing behaviors.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we do is behavioral based. That's, the work that I do with Virgin Pulse. It's about changing people's behaviors. And it's about we're almost getting ourselves into routines that we can do on a very easy basis. So, I say to people is, if you want to exercise, it is not about going to the gym or the pool. They're great. It's just about having a regular walk outside as well at the same time. So it's easy to do. It's about having that book that you can just pick up at the same time. It's about regulating the media. It is just about putting things into routines that you can do simply. If I look at the data, and I will think as, we're seeing an uptick in cases of dementia, for instance, which are coming into younger age group. There is so much evidence that says, even if you have a genetic risk of Alzheimer's, by starting by regular exercise in your 20s and 30s, a regular sleep pattern, watching what you eat, you can reduce your overall risk by anything up to 40%. But it is about saying to people, you can manage your health. And I said, we're all getting older. I know my years are advancing. I know I've had more years on this planet than I'm going to get now, but I'm determined I am not going to be old. So I still exercise, I still garden, I still read, I still work, because working with businesses like yourself, they give me inspiration, etc. You can take, it's about control. Do you want to take control, or do you still want to have this belief that if I get sick, somebody will fix me? I'm sorry, the fixing is broken.
And actually it links in, you talked about kind of responsibility here. And one of the things I'm really interested in, and something, I guess, a journey that we're going on as an organization as well, is around this collective responsibility. And that often I think about that saying around, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And so I think there's something around recognizing that our health and our well-being is a collective responsibility, and understanding what part we play in taking ownership of that versus, how as an organization at Jet, we can create an environment So rather than just fixing the fish, we're working on the water as well.
Yeah.
I'd love to know, Dr. B, just as the last question, because I'm conscious of time, I do want to do some signposting. How can we collectively work towards breaking down the stigma associated with mental health issues? Because I think there's a big part that we can play as individuals within the organisation in terms of supporting each other. This stigma piece you've come back to a lot. So going back to that kind of, collective responsibility piece, collective effort, what we can do collectively to break down so people do feel more comfortable seeking support.
Look, it's about taking a holistic approach. It starts from the top of an organisation. If you prepared to put health on the agenda, it's all very well. I see so many businesses saying our people are our most important asset, and then do nothing about it. You maintain your machinery, you maintain your logistics. Let's help people. Really do recognise that people are fundamental. I say to people, a healthy, resilient business needs healthy, resilient people. They are fundamental to you. So get health on the agenda. And I know that you do it within your organization. I know you have champions and you have processes, and it's there, but it's about leading it and leading by example. It's about making sure that whatever you do, you're thinking, is what we are doing going to contribute to the well-being and the clinical outcomes of our people? And people do work hard, and they continue to work hard, but they can play hard as well at the same time. Do you have that facility? If that swan is going down, that if somebody puts their hand up, you have the empathetic leaders who can support and do that? Do you have the signposting? It's not one thing. Do you have the education? It's a whole number of things, because we've got to fundamentally recognize that everybody is in a different level of their journey towards health, be it age or responsibilities or needs or experiences. And so it's about having everything. I believe it's about having that arena, that comfort, that culture that says your health is important, and here's a range of things that we can help you with. Allow people to make choices. And choices are vital, because you can't impose health on anybody, and you can take them, provide a trough that they're going to drink from, that they want to go to first of all. That itself is inspiring. That a whole range of things, from how do I exercise to I'm feeling really down and burnt out, where can I get some help from, etc. And I think that, but above all, leaders leading by example.
Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit about this point in a minute. I think what's really important is recognizing the role we all play in creating that environment, because I think it's one thing, as an organization, we do provide resources, and for sure there's more that we can do and will do. But I think, that beyond just that support, it's actually, what's the experience like within the organization? How do I show up in my interactions to other people? How do I support myself? How do I support others?
It's only by looking back, you've got it right. That's the thing.
So on the topic of signposting, I think we've talked a lot about behaviour change, Dr. B, and you also mentioned Virgin Pulse, our Jet Wellbeing Hub. I think one of the things, if we're in a place where we're looking at changing behaviours, I know you talked about New Year's resolutions, it's often the time people start to think about that. I'd always say, why start tomorrow? Why not start today? And actually the great thing in terms of the resources we have at Jet is we look at it through a couple of lenses in terms of where people are on their wellbeing journey. And I think if people are in a place where they're wanting to change habits, like build healthier habits, make small kind of changes that lead to really positive outcomes, we do have the Jet Wellbeing Hub that can really support in building those habits. But as part of that, we also have a global wellbeing coaching network, which can really help you. Sometimes we talked about why people perhaps don't see those behavior changes through, and accountability is a big part. Sometimes you just need the extra accountability and some guidance and steer. So that's where that wellbeing coaching with workplace options can really help. But also sometimes we don't recognize where things have gone too far, and actually we do need support. And I think, we obviously have our global mental health first aid community, but also, Dr. B, you mentioned a few times the employee assistance program. And I think with the employee assistance program, it's such a vast amount of support in terms of our psychological well-being for that, emotional distress or if people are really struggling, but also that financial advice you were talking around, and legal advice. And also, I think as individuals, sometimes we feel like nervous or kind of resist reaching out. Like you say, it takes a lot of courage. So if an individual is struggling, we can also arrange a kind of warm handover to the Employee Assistance Programme on their behalf. We are at time, Dr. B. Thank you so much as always. We love having you join us, and it's it's a privilege and a real pleasure to get just access to your insights, your expertise and experience. So thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you everybody for your questions. Hopefully that was a useful discussion with people, and there's some good takeaways there for people. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Take care, everyone. Thank you, Dr. B.
Stay safe.